last but not least is Dr. Chan, coming all the way from our neighbor to the north, from Canada, to finish us off with a board game. And you guys, I do realize that we're going to go a couple minutes over. I promise that we'll finish in time for the next session to start.
I'll skip the bilingual portion so that I don't have any disclosures. I'm going to tell you the story of what I did was for my Master's of Health Professions Education thesis. I studied multi-patient environments. And when we're doing simulation, often we're looking at like one patient at a time, but all of us know that we probably function in this kind of chaos. And when we're looking at a tracker board full of patients, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what we're going to do next. And so I had a coffee with my friend Matt, who we're both board game nerds, and we thought, hey, maybe there's an application after that we could create. And we recruited some students who helped us develop a serious game. So seriously, a game? A serious game is a game where obstacles are placed in the player's ways to achieve a defined learning outcome. Serious games have been described as a strategy for teaching skills in medicine. Everybody knows about tabletop exercises, and that's something that's been long and robust within our history. But really, every day is turning into a disaster now, so we thought we'd create a game that really comes down to kind of understanding maybe the complexities and the forces that are at play for emergency department flow. And so we delved into the literature. We also researched a bunch of games. We then did initial development and did, I think, 57 plan, do, study, act cycles in order to refine the game. And what it is at this point is that there's a board, there's a patient safety meter. You game out after three patient safety events. You have 8 turns, which represents 8 hours in which all your providers actually take care of patients. And each patient, as you can see there, has different actions that need to be done by the doctors, the nurses, to really represent that, interprofessional education, interprofessional care. And all the different characters have these counter cards that allow you to kind of keep track of their points per, or action points per turn. And then sometimes there's unexpected things like the medical student card where you roll the die and see if they're junior or senior. The med students made that one up, so, you know, or a code blue, right? So if a code blue call gets called, yeah. And so what happens is that we made a final product and we did some validity testing, which allowed us to kind of show that people do actually, real providers actually do feel that this is a good product. And they thought that the cases and the event cards actually really added to the realism. And we've got our innovation report accepted in academic medicine. We're selling the game, but we thought, what should we do next? And the next part is that we want to move the mark with maybe changing patient perceptions about wait times. And so we're going to be doing some pilot studies to develop that survey tool, but we'd like to do a pre-post, hopefully multi-center trial to see if embedding various scenarios will allow us to communicate to patients and maybe parents the idea of why someone might be waiting for staples into their scalp versus the cardiac arrest that's down the hall. And I think that we'd like to also obviously check out acceptability to see if there's any changes that we need to make from the training module version of this versus the other. And so I've never really done anything truly multi-centered. Done some studies that are involving multiple sites for rating and doing other kind of like digital means. So not something that where there's actual people all at the different spots recruiting their own data. I'm also looking to obviously have collaborators interested eventually in setting up the sites, and it might be something that we can open up our portal to have multinational grants that we might pursue. We are looking for input because we're not dead set on our survey design yet. We're still in our piloting phase. And a little bit about myself, because I guess we're supposed to talk about that in this. So I have a pretty solid early career track record. I've published some, I've won some money, I've won some national Canadian awards, so not quite as big as a national American award, but something. And my collaborators don't mind working with me, so that's always good to have an endorsement from other people. And so this is what my pitch is, that I think it's a novel platform. I think it'd be a fun project to get advice on, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of our team.
I think you're doing good work. Congratulations on your 2017 award and your 90 publications. I think in about 5 years with high impact. So is the patient expectations, I know a little bit about Canadian medicine, I know you're at McMaster, but you work in both countries, but are they a bit different? And this is the goal is to sort of see how patients appreciate this. Are they a bit different there than here from the emergency department setting?
Mostly, North American studies have lumped the two categories together when it comes to satisfaction. We don't study satisfaction at the rates that you folks do south of the 49th parallel, for sure. But it is something that people are starting to dabble into. A lot of the time with Canadian studies, what happens is we try to take your effect sizes and divide them, or infer that we would be a similar population, or we take some of the changes that happen and assume and generalize to our population, which may not actually hold true, which would be interesting to explore for sure.
We study it a lot, but you actually do nothing about it afterwards. So that was not. So we've actually at Pitt and UPMC have done serious game technology to change physician behavior. We have a Lancet paper on Christmas Day made that issue, trying to use game technology to teach emergency physicians about improving trauma triage. So the idea was a setting of a community hospital and what would trigger you to refer or not refer. Have another PNAS paper about what are the cognitive determinants that would make someone change. So it's a little bit more mature than the gaming technology you're talking about here. It's on an electronic platform, allows more interaction. What I don't know much about is extending that into the patient experience and expectation. You're actually not just trying to change the provider's thoughts and hopefully behavior, but now on the patient side. So I don't have a lot of experience. I think this is really exciting because we often assume we know what patients want and don't want, and in fact, I don't think we know. I don't know surveying them is going to be the right thing because that's what people say they would tolerate, which is way different from what they actually really do tolerate when you make them wait. My experience is nobody wants to hear a reason why they're not first. It doesn't really matter all that much after a certain period of time. My offer to you is I will connect you with the person that I'm on the mentoring team in Pittsburgh. It's Deepika Mohan. I don't know if you know in this space.
Yeah,
She's federally funded in this area. I mean, it's very hard to get ours in this field, but she's managed to do that. Because I think a conversation there to see what translates well and what doesn't translate well might be helpful to you. And she's probably 3 or 4 years ahead of you on the curve.
That's great. Thank you.
I didn't know Hasbro has our grants.
That would be Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Rose, yeah. Do you have other offers or thoughts for her?
Yeah. So I think this is really interesting. Out of the box, or very creative.
More in the
no,
box,
no
maybe.
pun intended. I'm not the right person for you. I think Dawn's offer is fantastic. I am wondering though, like a board game. Board game seems very old school, which is cool in one way, but also like how do you get a patient in the waiting room to play a board game and these pieces are going to get lost, and seems like the natural path would be translating this into an electronic platform. And I'm wondering if you're intentionally avoiding that, or if that is sort of part of the pathway that you're pursuing.
Yeah, so basically what our thought was that originally it was derived as a teaching tool. And so actually in the board game literature around serious games, board games have a different capacity to do that for trainees and residents who are actually going through the board game with, let's say, a teacher at the table. That fundamentally changes, like people that have played both Settlers of Catan in electronic version versus the real life version actually have very, very different quality of play, I guess you could say, like quality of life, but that what they learn and what they extract is very different. There's eye contact in one, and it's like playing, I don't know, everyone has played online poker versus like in-person poker, very different games, right? So that's why we derived it. Now we want to adapt it, and you're probably right. That's probably what a lot of people will game play and say, actually, like I can't play this in the weight room. I'd love to, and then we could look into obviously creating a chain of evidence to say maybe the next grant would be to translate into electronic. But right now, what we've started with is that initial educational platform that we want to see if it can adapt. And I think the plan would not be to actually play in the weight room, but rather recruit people there and then have it kind of ex vivo to see if they can at least move the mark with their perceptions and then see how it pans out.
Any other offers or thoughts for Dr. Chan before we close out the session?
Okay.
Do you accept Dr. Yili's offer?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Awesome. So I want to thank again all of our presenters for kind of outside of the room so that we can exchange contact information. And for those of you that were sitting in the audience, I will encourage you to apply. This will be happening again next year. And will be another nice chance to get feedback. So thank you guys all for coming.